Hello, welcome to Cup of Joe. This is a special edition of Cup of Joe. Happy Hanukkah to everyone. For this special edition, we have in the studio three generations of Hellersteins. I am privileged to have my father, Judge Alvin Hellerstein, who will be turning 92, please God, at the end of the month, and his uh, youngest grandson, Sally Hellerstein, to my left. And we hope to have a conversation about tradition, about family traditions, about different experiences that my father had in throughout the generations that he lived. And I think it's especially fitting for Hanukkah, which is really a holiday where we celebrate tradition. And I'm very pleased to have you both here, Dad, Sally. Thank you for joining me. And why don't we open up the conversation with what I think thinks that Sally would be interested in hearing from my father, and then we could pick it up from there and just have a free conversation. Let's start maybe with your experiences as a child. My father is the son of immigrants from Lithuania who came in the 1920s to America,
Mother from Lithuania, father from Belarus, then
Belarus.
Poland.
Okay, and my father was born in Lenox Hill Hospital and grew up in the Bronx. And why don't you tell Sally what it was like growing up in the Bronx? My father was born in 1933. What was it like growing up in the 1930s and 40s in the Bronx?
Um, That's a long period of time. And we moved from different places, but the place that was where I was most involved, the most grew up, was in the West Bronx, in what's now called University Heights. It was a neighborhood mostly of Jewish people, working people, small business people, some better off, some less off, but we all thought we were well off. We weren't well off, of course, but we didn't know the difference. Most of our time was spent in the schoolyard playing stickball or other sports of the season. Was it a wasted youth of sports activities, or we got in there? I don't know. We had a good time.
Well, explain to everyone here what is the concept of a schoolyard, because I think that's a lost concept. Many don't really understand the idea of a schoolyard. And I know I grew up that one of the things you always told me, and also my friends, who I'm sure are listening and watching this podcast, are the rules of the schoolyard. What are the rules of the schoolyard?
It's all custom. Uh, First of all, there's a public school in every neighborhood. We went to grade school there from the first to the sixth grade. And then after that, a little more distant and just sort of in the next neighborhood, a junior high school for the seventh, eighth, and ninth grades. So around the school was a schoolyard. And the children would go out for recess. And after school was a place where you played ball. My father mentions the rules of the game. For example, there'd be a basketball game, and you come and then you declare that you are next. So if the winning team wins, the winning team stays on, the losing team goes off, and you come on and form your own team or pick some of the loser's team, and you go on and play. And whoever wins stays, and someone else comes in. And everyone is equal in this situation. Doesn't make any difference who you are, what race you are, where you come from. It's how you play basketball.
We have that here.
I don't know if you call that a
Yeah,
rule.
I think well, these are unwritten rules, and I think that the rules those rules are somewhat the same. But and Sally, feel free to jump in here with anything that interests you.
I would just say that we do have that here.
Same kind of rules in terms of
No,
getting
we
into
have a
a game.
schoolyard. You said schoolyard is a concept that's not known anymore. We have schoolyards, yeah, Ariel,
Right.
in certain area,
Right.
and they would be open in the afternoon, and that's where guys would go play, not basketball, and here it would be more soccer. It's the same idea,
Right.
Because you go and you just join a team.
Usually in the schoolyard, some basketball hoops, probably a wall to play handball or racquetball, right, Dad?
We didn't play so much handball. We used to play stickball and hit it against the wall. And, there was all kinds of games that you play. I don't really remember all of them, but we played football in the football season. We played stickball year-round, mostly in the baseball season. We played basketball. Those are really the sports we played.
And you mentioned that you grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. That means that the kids that attended the school were mostly Jewish kids?
Yes, mostly Jewish kids.
Even though it was a public school, it was not a Jewish school.
That's correct.
Right. And that's because that the kids from the neighborhood all went to the neighborhood school.
Right, right. I think the school was stratified. The brighter kids were put in a 1 class if you were a boy, and in a 3 class if you were a girl. And then if you didn't make that high grade, it was co-ed in a 4th class. And then the people who didn't do that went to the 2 class. Most of the kids in the 1 class where I went were Jewish.
Mm-hmm. And were most of the kids there children of immigrants?
Well, I had 2 very close friends. One's parents were born in the United States, and they had a higher class job. His father used to go down to downtown to work. My closest friend, father came from Hungary, and he was a salesman of life insurance for Metropolitan Life. Others, it varied, and I don't really remember. I think not everybody was a child of an immigrant. There were also people whose parents had been born here.
Right. I mean, I had a very close relationship with your parents, my grandma and grandpa. So I really, I would love for Sally to get a taste of what it was like being around the store, Grandpa's store. Tell Sally, please, what the store was like. It's a little bit about your father and also Grandma who worked in the store together. Tell Sally about about the store and the atmosphere around the store.
Well, my mother worked at the very beginning, but not afterwards, and I don't remember much about her working. It may be very spotty. My father had a large market. He had the fruit and vegetable section, and he rented out or subleased sections for a dairy and for a grocery. At one time for a meat market, but that didn't last because it created problems for everybody else. And similarly with a fish market. But basically it was fruit and vegetable, groceries, and dairy. And my father had the fruit and vegetable part. And he worked very hard and very long hours. He worked Saturdays. Saturday was the busiest day of the week, and often would work till 9, 10 o'clock. When I was in a junior year in high school, I told my father that I wanted to work for him. And he said, no, you can't. And I insisted, and so I did. And I worked very closely with my father, and it brought us very close together. And that lasted through high school into the first year of college, and then I stopped.
How did you? How did the business work? You would buy from You would have to go to the wholesaler to buy, or they would bring deliveries. Would he be able to pick out what kind of produce, the quality of produce?
This is a whole different story, and it's a story of immigrants, Jewish immigrants, Italian immigrants, later Korean immigrants. You didn't need too much capital to open up a fruit and vegetable store. And the capital was lent to you by a wholesaler. He financed you, got your fixtures, you had to lease yourself, and you were obligated to buy the fruit and vegetables he brought around by truck. When my father paid off that debt, he went to the market himself or got other people to deliver and was less reliant on the particular wholesaler who had established him. My father was very good at having first-class products to sell, and he enjoyed selling, and he was very good at his business.
What would you say your parents' dream for you was? For you, did they want you to go into the fruits and vegetable business?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The stress was getting an education. My mother would have loved for me to be a doctor. My oldest cousin had been studying to be an engineer, and so I thought I should do so also. But at some point in time, it was very clear that there was huge anti-Semitism about getting jobs as an engineer. And I liked history and English better than science, so I switched to being thinking about being a lawyer. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, particularly because the draft for the Korean War was coming on, and the doctors were getting deferments more than anybody else. But I had no interest in being a doctor, so I was going to be a lawyer.
And what did Grandpa want you to be?
He liked the idea of my being a lawyer. I don't think he ever said anything against it, but clearly he did not want me to be in the business.
But there was a stress on academics, on academic achievement and excellence?
Yes.
Sally, do you find that Mommy and I stress that for you? Too much, just the right amount, or not enough? What would you say, Sals?
Take the Fifth Amendment.
I don't know how to answer that. Huh? I don't think I've ever been stressed in a. If so, then tatmuda, as it is called.
In
I
your
don't know how you would translate that.
In your subconscious,
subconsciously been pushed.
Would you say that this was a general feeling in the neighborhood that most of the parents push their kids to achieve it academically?
Yes.
Was that kind of an idea that was the way to improve your life in America and move up?
Yes, yes. And the schools were stratified that way. The brighter kids were in a higher classification, a higher stratum than the kids who were slower. And everything about school and about home was to be as smart as you could and get as good set of grades as you could and study hard. And if there was a dispute with a teacher, the teacher was assumed to be correct and the child assumed to be wrong. Mm-hmm. Studies got harder as you went along. In junior high school, you started getting homework. In high school, we went to the Bronx High School of Science, the top academic high school in the city at that time, along with one or two others. Studies were particularly difficult. You took a lot of courses, and you were held to very high standards. And I was good at it. I usually ended up around second in the class. And I didn't want to be first because those kids studied too hard. I wanted to play ball also.
Mm-hmm. No, I actually I tell my kids that I think in many ways their childhood is more similar to yours than to mine, because I imagine that your childhood was a very free childhood. You were able to, you left the house whenever you want to meet with your friends in the street. There was you didn't worry about walking in the street on your own. Friends got together, outside in the schoolyard
But there were no telephones, so if you wanted to go up to your friend's house, you went up and you knocked on the door and you went in. Uh-huh. And if you wanted to stay for dinner, you stayed for dinner, and your mother didn't worry.
Right.
We would take the trolley car to go to a distant park to play baseball when we were kids, or go to the movies, or go to a Yankee game. Life was pretty free. The only thing you had to be worried about when you went to Hebrew school, there were a gang of Irish kids that used to be hanging around, and sometimes they liked to pick on the Jewish boys.
Uh-huh. But I remember a story you told me about, and I also have told the story to my kids. You have a scar
I've never heard that.
Huh?
I've
I never told you the story. This is as good a time as any to tell the story. You have a scar on the right side of your forehead. Right side of your forehead?
I have a scar on
the
right
left
over
side.
the right eye.
Right. What happened there? Explain. Tell
Well,
Sally.
there was an empty lot near my house, and my cousin was in a rock fight. Some kids in the lot and throwing rocks, and so I went to my cousin's aid. My mother came down outside, saw what was going on, and she yelled at me, and I turned around and got hit by a rock.
Oh, so it was Grandma's fault.
Of course. Of course.
Right. Now, were these the Irish kids that used to bother you, or a different group of kids?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
And so the reason I think that the upbringing is similar is because, I grew up.
Life was on the streets, and there were different kinds of kids and different kind of gangs and different kinds of neighborhoods. And you knew that if you went to one neighborhood, you had to be careful. Your own neighborhood, you were secure.
Right. Let's Sally, where do you want to go with this? Do you have anything to add here? You want to jump in? Anything? Do you want to hear about Poppy's professional?
Say
life?
what you want to ask and then ask.
I'm giving you a few
ask.
options. You can
I have my own questions.
Go ahead.
I the other day looked into. I think this must have been earlier than your childhood. The whole idea. Daddy always likes to talk about how the idea that at some point Jews came to the decision that they need to get a higher education. Higher education had a value in of itself. Daddy and Safta also really like to talk about that. And that there was a big debate starting from, I think, already the 1800s till probably around your time of should Jews go into higher education and kind of open up into the outside world. Is that at the expense or not at the expense of the Jewish world?
That was not a question in my life.
But did you feel like it was a question in your surroundings? Were there people around you? Was there still an idea of not going into higher education or not trying to connect to the outside world?
No, first of all, the control of religious authorities and feelings was very low. I was the most religious of the group. I went to Hebrew school starting 8th grade, but I didn't go to yeshiva. I went to Hebrew school after finishing the school day, and usually it was 2 or 3 times. No, 2 or 3 times a week, plus Sunday. So of course it was very unpopular. But my mother started me when I was very young, and I finished when I was very young. My friends went to Hebrew school, but in a much less intensive way. My father was working, so we didn't really have a Shabbat attendance on Saturday. My father went to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur only. Passover, he took off a couple of days, but I don't remember him going to shul. After I was bar mitzvah, I went to shul a bit, but then I stopped. It was not the style of life at that time to worry about your religious education after bar mitzvah. And my mother wanted me to go. She persuaded me to and enrolled me in a school called Herzliya, where I learned Hebrew and Tanakh and other studies. But by the end of 1 year, I was ready to quit, and my mother insisted I go in another year. I did, but that was the end of it. And she wanted me to get supplementary education in private lessons with the head of the Hebrew school, but I was against it. The pull of the schoolyard was very large. Pull of being with one's friends was very large. I mean, in my neighborhood, no one went to yeshiva.
What do you think was your mother's drive to push you so much into Jewish education?
Well, her father was very much involved in Jewish education. I was named for his father. he was a learned man. He was about Kriya in the shul. He's also a secular man. He read the secular newspapers. He wanted my mother to have an education, and my mother's sister. Now, my mother had this passion for education that she passed on to me. My father's experience is more working. He had the aspiration that his son not go through the same kind of life that he did. He had a pretty tough life. But the educational push was my mother.
But Grandpa knew he had a basic education. He knew how to daven, how to even read the Haftorah, and he knew how to read Hebrew.
Yes, all of that.
But at a certain point, I guess after age 13, he went to work.
Yes, right. And at that age too, there was a war going on in Europe, which
World War One.
Yeah, which affected him very much. His father was shot during that war. So life was pretty tough for him. And he came here penniless to the United States. They had to make a living right from the beginning. My mother also had to make a living, but my mother had a feeling for education. She went to night school a bit, read some books. She prized education.
How do you go from being penniless to owning a store?
Well, that's a good story. You work hard. There was easy financing in the business, as I told you before, and he liked to work for himself.
But if you didn't have any education, what about running a business? Didn't that require education, or if you could you make up for it just with being smart and quick and drive?
The truth is, I don't know. He had a good business sense. He was very good with numbers, and that was sufficient.
Let's fast forward, Sally. Unless you want to have some other questions, I thought maybe we jump to the age that you are now and hear from Poppy.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Did your parents see? Did they see any kind of way of a grandson being a fully religious man and living in Israel with religious family and full religious education?
My parents loved Joseph, loved your dad.
Now, did they see that happening? Did they have any strive for?
Oh, I don't know. Every parent thinks that he has the perfect solution to how life should be lived, including religious life should be lived. And when your son becomes more religious than you are, you think that somehow it's a comment on your life. It's hard to understand, hard to digest, but then you do.
I connected with Grandma at least very much on a Jewish educational plane because she loved to share with me the stories that she knew from Europe, how she lived in the same town as the Chafetz Chaim, and she shared those stories with me. She would go over the Yiddish paper with me and tell me about all the different rabbis that were discussed there. And she told me a lot of interesting stories about her life in Europe, and she told me about her father also. So I did connect with them on that level. And if you remember, Dad, when Grandpa used to lay in the Haftorah every year in Parshat Pinchas, the story of Yiftach, I would go to the Bronx and I would go over the Haftorah with him a few weeks before. Grandma would call me up and say, Grandpa has to read the Haftorah. Can you come and go over with him? And I would go, and we have a very nice time going over the Haftorah together. So he had a really nice voice, Grandpa. He knew how to lane very well. I mean, for someone who left Jewish education at age 13, he knew very well. He knew how to daven well.
He didn't know how to lane.
He knew how to lane the Haftorah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, we did connect on that level. Sally now is 20 years old. Tell us what were you doing at age 20 so that Sally can
19.
get in that, huh?
19.
You're going to be 20. Sally's going to be 20 in February. And tell us, like,
I was in law school.
at age 20, how'd you get to law school so fast? I know the answer. I'm just I just want to set up the answer for you.
I skipped 3 times in school.
Could you believe that, Sally, that people actually skipped grades?
In the 4th
Back
grade,
Happens nowadays.
Yeah.
Once.
in the 4th grade, there was a shortage of teachers because of the war was going on, and so the very bright kids had a combination of the first semester and the second semester, and that dropped a half a semester out of you. And then in junior high school, there was a program, the citywide program called Rapid Advance, where you would skip another half year. And so that made it a year now. And then in high school, I did want to graduate in February. I wanted to graduate in June, so I went to summer school for a couple of courses. And therefore, by the end of high school, I had skipped 1.5 grades. So I finished high school in June of 1950, and I was then 16 years old, 16 and a half years old. I started college in September of that year. I started college when I was 16 and a half. After 3 years of college, for other kinds of reasons, I did not want to. I could take advantage of a program that combined the 4th year of college and the 1st year of law school. So I went to law school when I was 18 and a half.
What was the rush?
What?
What was the rush?
Good question, Sally.
It was a bad mistake.
Rushing.
Well, parts were bad. Well, I think it was a bad mistake. Number one, I didn't have maturity when I was in high school. So socializing was very difficult for me. And I continued into high school. I found it difficult to deal with other people, and particularly girls. And in college, the same thing. It was not until law school that I felt have a certain degree of maturity. And then when I went in the Army after law school, then I sort of gained a sense of myself. It took a long time.
That must have been hard coming from the old neighborhood where you were kind of like very, very social, had a lot of friends, and to go to an environment where it was a little bit more difficult and maybe awkward because of your age.
I had a certain group of friends. Wouldn't say I had a lot of friends. I had a certain group of friends. And that continued through school, through high school also, because we all went to the same school. It was not, in law school I started making friends. It turned out I was more popular than I thought it was. But I would have been better off being older. Also,
And you don't know why you rushed. You don't. I had a conversation the other day with my friend.
The first 1 year was sort of programmatic. And then the idea was if you got out of college, if you got out of high school in mid-year, you couldn't start college right away. So you had to have a year and a half to sort of do something, and you couldn't get a job then. So
You couldn't get a job at age 16?
there were no jobs. It was depression.
I think that's why you stressed for me the importance of getting all the years of taking advantage of all the years of education.
Right.
I remember you told me when I went to yeshiva after high school in Israel that you didn't want me to get any credits from BMT because you wanted to have me to have a full 4 years of college.
Right.
Was that directive at all influenced by your experience?
Yes. It was very much affected by my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I also didn't like it that you took a minimum of courses. Thought you should have taken more courses.
Where?
In college.
Oh, I didn't take a minimum of courses. No, I'm not sure. I do remember that I on the eve of graduation I was a half a class short, and you and mom and grandma were coming for the graduation. I wasn't going to get a diploma until I was able to make contact with the BMT administrator overseas, and at that time it wasn't so easy. miracle of miracles. If it's Hanukkah, we can mention a miracle. Somebody actually picked up the phone on the other side, and I was able to get my transcript from BMT faxed to the Cornell Near Eastern Studies Department and slipped to get my diploma at the last minute.
Of course, we didn't know this.
No, of course you didn't. Right.
I would say you've passed the same idea off to me. At least tried.
Which idea?
Of not going for minimum and going for a full education.
Okay. See that, Dad?
You weren't happy that I finished most of my important studies before 12th grade, even though it didn't make a difference.
Right. I felt like your 12th grade was a little bit a waste. But that's really the nature of the Israeli system, where you take your bagriot, and once you're finished with your bagriot, there's really no reason to go to school.
No, but I finished English early. I finished my mega mile early. Those were the two of the biggest stuff.
Right.
And you weren't happy about that.
So you find yourself at age 20 in law school. Sali is at an age Sali's gonna have to go to the army soon, and he's in yeshiva. But at some point, he's gonna have to try to figure out what he wants to do with his life. How did you make the decision to become a lawyer? I know that you had thought about it when you were younger, but how did you ultimately make that decision to go to law school?
I was pre-law in college, so I kind of knew on entering college what I wanted to do. You have to understand, my parents were poor, and I knew that. And I knew that I could not waste time, that it was my job to get out of the house and earn a living for myself. I could not be dependent on my parents. And so there was no luxury of wasting time. You couldn't waste time. You had to move ahead and get to a point where you could earn money.
And how were you able to come up with the money to pay for law school?
I worked at the Catskills, and I had scholarships.
Tell Sally and maybe some of our viewers about the Catskills, especially in that time in the 1950s.
Well, you got yourself hired as a busboy in a Catskill hotel. You had to have some skill to begin with, otherwise you'd break the trays. But you gain that skill, and then you learn how to serve on tables. It was a 7-day week, 3 meals a day. You woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you didn't go to finish your work until 9 o'clock in the evening. You had breaks during the day, but not too much. But you were young, and making money was very good.
When did you do this?
I did that when I was 18 and 19 and 20. And I earned all my tuition and my room and board.
That is amazing that you were able to work in one summer. You could make enough money to pay for your tuition and room and board.
Yes,
that's amazing, and that's how you managed to come up with the tuition.
And I had a scholarship.
Right. Oh, you also had a scholarship.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a state scholarship in college. New York State provided that if you go to school in the state and got a high grade on a particular examination, you're eligible to get a state scholarship, which paid for about 2/3 of tuition at that time. And that ended when I went to law school, but then I got a good scholarship in law school. So altogether, I was okay. I had money.
Just as a side note, I think it's very relevant to talk about now. We've seen in the past few years where gambling has become more and more a part of society. You can't watch a sports game without being able to or being pushed to place a bet on the game or every part of the game. You've told me stories about some of the busboys and waiters, what happened to their wages. And I think it's a lesson also for Sali's friends and young people that are watching about the dangers of gambling. You also told me about what also relevant to Hanukkah, because Hanukkah We know about the dreidel games that took place, and whether it was just a ruse to make sure that the Hellenists didn't see that we were actually studying Torah. But the games do have a part in Hanukkah. Tell Sally about what you saw in some of the waiters and the busboys, and also some of the experiences of Grandpa with people that got involved in gambling.
Sunday was a payday in the Catskills. That's when you collected your tips, because people left and people came. And when they left, they gave you the tips. I didn't like to gamble, so I never did. But some of the busboys did gamble. They gambled typically with guys with the dishwashers. It was a different class of people. But some of the busboys were cleaned out, and I could understand how they could do it. They were working to make their tuition in college, and here their tuition was wiped out by gambling. I never liked to gamble at all. My friends didn't gamble. It was, I don't know why, I can't say. I guess I just did not like the idea of losing. It was hard enough to have something, and the risk of losing was too much.
Well, wasn't that message also driven to you by Grandpa and his experiences in his with his colleagues and people that were in the business?
I heard my father's stories about friends of his who lost their business gambling. This is also the loan sharks that the gangs had in those days, where people who had their jobs or had their stores would lose money, and they need more money, so they borrow from loan sharks at very high percentage rates. And when they couldn't pay the loan sharks, they often were maimed and forced to pay and lost everything. And my father had friends who went through that. At a particular time in my legal career, when I had money, I had friends and I bought a racehorse, and we placed minor bets on the racehorse and the like. And I took my father one time to a racetrack, and he was like had a physical aversion, like just to have an allergy. You ever see a person with an allergy get excited? That was like what happened to my father. He had to go home very quickly.
But let's move on to you graduate law school, and now you need to get a job. What was the environment there for a Jewish kid graduating law school at that time in the job market? I want Sally to...
There was heavy anti-Semitism. There were a couple of Jewish firms where a Jewish kid could get a job. They paid less than the Gentile firms. And it was just a very, how could I put it? It was a very harsh market to come into. So I had gotten a job in my second year in the summertime for the RCA offices, but they had a lot of Jews in RCA. The company's called the Radio Corporation of America, or RCA. It was a very large corporation at the time. And they had Jews, and I get jobs. I got a good summer job. Then went around to some of the law firms, and although some wouldn't interview, some interviewed, and it was clear they would not take you. The Jewish firms I didn't like the idea that they were underpaying the market. I was able to get a job with a judge as a law clerk. And so that was what I did. And from there, I went into the Army for 3 years as a judge advocate. And so when I came out of the Army, there was still anti-Semitism, but less so.
Why so?
Less so.
Why?
I think there were more of a need for talent. And when you have a need for talent, you can't be so discriminating on grounds other than talent.
Were the Jewish firms able to corner a market, and were they competing with the traditional Gentile firms with put pressure on on the allowing Jews to enter in the market and the desire of these older firms, more traditional Gentile firms, to hire Jews?
No, the Gentile firms didn't hire the Jews because they didn't want to hire Jews.
How did they compete then?
What?
How did they compete?
They're not smart Gentile people. And things were more relationship focused. It's also interesting, they were also in commerce and in industry, Jewish companies. Like in the textile business, the first 2 or 3 were Gentile firms, and they had Gentile law firms. Then there was a large Jewish company. We represented them. Companies, Cohen Marx. And in other fields as well, there were Jewish companies, and they sought out Jewish lawyers. The whole situation broke down in the 60s when a lot of talent was required, and there were different kinds of what we call tender fights and proxy fights among the companies seeking to absorb one another. And some Jewish firms started to advance, and Jewish talent was desired, and so the anti-Semitism broke down.
Saleh, are you curious about Poppy's experience in the army?
Yeah, I think
Since you're supposed to go into the army in a few
I
months.
think it's very different, but he's talked a lot about
You
it.
can't talk in your cup, Sally.
Sorry.
Poppy's already told you about that experience.
I think so. If we can talk about it. It's up to you.
Well, I'm interested to know. You functioned as a lawyer in the army. Is that correct?
Right.
What kind of cases did you do?
Well, first year I taught for 2 years in the Judge Advocate School. It was sort of a graduate level school, as well as an instructional school for new lieutenants.
But you were just out of. You were fresh out of law school. How could you teach?
I was fresh out of law school, and I had a year's experience as a law clerk. But I was able to teach. I was good at it. I had good ability to extemporize. And I created courses, and I edited a magazine.
This was in Korea or in Charlottesville?
Charlottesville, Virginia. And then I applied to go overseas, and the only place that give you a 13-month tour, most were longer, was Korea. So
Was the war going on at that time?
it was over.
But we still had United States still had troops in Korea.
We had 50,000 troops in Korea. We had 2 divisions and a Marine brigade. And no one had real confidence that the war was over. It was an armistice. It wasn't even an armistice. People just stopped fighting. The ceasefire. And we were stationed about 10 miles from the front line. So it was a situation where you didn't feel you're going to go into a fight, but it was never far away. I was a lawyer, and I counseled servicemen. I also tried cases as a trial counsel, which is like the prosecutor, or a defense counsel. There was another lieutenant, and we switched off every week. One week I would take the prosecutor's side, the next week I would take the defense side. And it was a very good trial experience. So when I came out of practice and come into a firm, I knew how to try a case. Most people did not know how to try a case.
Do you feel the Army helped you advance in your...
The Army gave me maturity. I was in a world that there were very few Jews. So I had to get along with other people. I had to make friends with other people. The Jewish people sort of found each other. There was a chaplain a few years before me that created a kosher kitchen in the capital, Seoul. And so the servicemen would, Saturday was a half a day work day, and Saturday afternoon we'd come down to Seoul. And Sunday morning there used to be a prayer service at a breakfast. So all the Jews got together, including some Jews in the Turkish army that was also stationed in Korea at that time.
Why was the Turkish army there?
Turkey had a brigade that just stayed on for a while.
Fighting alongside the United States?
Yes, there was an Ethiopian detachment also.
The Jews there too.
What?
Any Jews in the Ethiopian?
What?
Any Jews in the Ethiopian?
No, but their cap insignia had a Star of David in it, a Lion of David, because they dated themselves back to the Queen of Sheba.
When you're describing the Korean War was a part of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. What was it like? A lot of your lifetime and your professional life, especially, was in the shadow of the Cold War, and you also lived through. I mean, my father will be turning 92. I mentioned, please God, at the end of the month. Well, you lived through World War II. You lived through the Korean War. You lived through the Cold War. How did that impact your everyday life, your professional life? You also lived through the fall of the Iron Curtain, and you've seen the freedom that came out of the Soviet Union's demise. And how did that affect? All these things are going on in parallel to your personal life. What was the impact, and how did you feel that in your life?
I don't think it was Israel.
Several historical moments, including the founding of Israel, the 6-Day War. You've lived through all these events. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like?
Well, there's a lot of different emotions and stories. In 1948, when Israel became a state, I was in high school. And I remember excitement. I remember my mother's excitement. I remember listening to the votes and the time when the Soviet Union and all its satellite countries voted for establishment of Israel. And we were all very excited. But it didn't change my life in any way. I didn't feel any change in my life. But I must have, because I had a passion about Israel. And when I was in the army in Korea, when I was looking to get out of the army, I was thinking that maybe I wouldn't stay in the United States, but I'd go on to Israel and join the army there.
As a lawyer or as a soldier?
As a lawyer or soldier or whatever. I mean, these are not well-formed delusions. When we got married, when my wife and I, Grandma and I got married, which was 1962, we went on a honeymoon for 5 weeks in Israel, just in Israel, and toured the country. So we felt Zionism, both of us, very, very strongly, and very much involved in coming back and forth with Israel. Zionism was very strong throughout. In terms of the Cold War, there was a fear in the United States that there would be a war between Russia and the United States. And the United States feared that Russia would be the first to use an atomic bomb. And in school, we learned to duck under our desks as if that could protect us from an atomic bomb. So there was a palpable fear in the society. Did it affect my life? I can't remember that it really affected my life in any way. But there was news all the time. And then you had the situation with when President Kennedy came in office, and Khrushchev, Russia, wanted to test him. And we found out that there was Russian weaponry going into Cuba. That was very close to war, very close to war. And as the story unfolded, and we learned about it later on, it was very fortunate that war did not break out at that time. So that was in the atmosphere.
What about the 6-Day War? What were your impressions during the 6
the impressions of the 6-Day War. I was in a lawsuit in the Securities and Exchange Commission the day the war broke out. And we were all very anxious. There was no news.
Who's
and
we?
My friends and I.
Your friends from the law firm, from
People who were in the law firm, yes, trying the case.
At this point, you're married and living on the West Side,
yes.
and you and Mom had decided at that point when you got married in 1962 that, or when you started, when Dina, my oldest sister,
Well, we had Judith and we had Dina at that time.
and you had decided that you wanted to give them a Jewish education, and you also started to attend shul on a regular basis on Shabbos at least. So you had more of a
The story goes back about that. So we had a kosher home. My mother was very strong on Shabbat, but I was breaking away. And through college, I broke away. I stopped going to shul except on Rosh Hashanah. I stopped being kosher. And then, because of the influence of law and the notion of tradition in law, I started to read myself back into Jewish life and doing self-study. And I continued when I was in the Army, and particularly continued in Korea. And so when I came back, I was determined that I would start moving into observance. I started to go to shul on Shabbat. I wasn't yet kosher, but I wouldn't eat ham or pork. And I wouldn't eat meat, but I would eat fowl, like chicken, duck, and fish. And but when we met Grandma, we both had the same background. We decided that we would keep kosher home. Then when it came time for Dina, my eldest daughter, to attend school,
I know.
We thought that she should go to public school and have a Jewish education in a Hebrew school afterwards, the same way we did. But there really were no good afternoon schools at the time. And we met friends involved with Ramaz. And so we started thinking of Ramaz and enrolled Dina in Ramaz. And we liked the life. We liked the school. We liked the people in the school. We liked the shul. We liked the rabbi in the shul. We liked the people in the shul. And it all came to have us grow spiritually, to become observant, and to be very much interested in having a very good education for our children, where they would be learned in religious subjects and learned in secular subjects.
So in the wake of all that, coming to the 6-Day War, you had would you say a heightened Jewish identity, a heightened connection to Israel?
We'd already been Israel. We had been Israel for 5 weeks.
I saw pictures of that from your slides
Yeah,
in your house.
right.
Right. Remember, Sally went through your slide collection. We still have
So
some work to do on that.
That whole day was a nerve-wracking day, because there were rumors came out that the Egyptians broke through the Jewish lines, and the Jews were going to be pushed into the sea. It would be another Shoah. And then the news came in, what really happened, and we were so elated. It's hard to describe how excited and elated we were. That was the 6-Day War.
Did that have an impact on Jews in general in the United States? Was there more Jewish pride, more connection with Jewish identity?
There was more Jewish pride.
How did that show itself?
It's hard to say how it showed itself. It just that everyone respected Israel and Jews because they knew how to fight. They knew how to take care of themselves. They prevailed.
I think this is something that maybe Israelis growing up don't understand the stereotype of the Jew in America and the aversion to fighting and what it meant to the image of the Israeli soldier. How did you relate to that as a
the image of the European Jew Jewish male was someone who had thick glasses and was undernourished or too fat and was not at all athletic. And we know that there were some rabbis who did not believe that there should be attention to the physical life.
Just saw that. At the yeshiva.
Right.
We saw Rav Cook said that.
The Israeli was different. At the beginning, Israelis did not think well of the Jewish people who went into the Shoah because they didn't think they fought. The fact is that every single city fought. Every shtetl fought. There were rebellions in many, many concentration camps, not just only in Warsaw. But this was not known and not appreciated at the time. And here the Jews got up in 1967, notwithstanding a boycott and getting arms from America, notwithstanding the was an animosity, but there was no real feeling toward Israel by the American governments. The Eisenhower administration didn't really enjoy Israel. They thought they were a pain in the ass, that America needed to be closer to the Arabs, and they did not like the mix of influence the Jews had on the Democratic Party. So all this was in play, and the '67 war turned it around. Completely turned it around. It was one most important aspect of life for Jews in America, as it was for Israel.
What was the atmosphere in the firm? Were people openly elated in the firm? You mentioned it was a Jewish firm. Did you feel the same elation from your colleagues, from your partners, from the other people in the firm?
I don't remember anything about that.
Now, what about you mentioned the Cold War and the impact. Tell Sally a little bit about your involvement, or your and Grandma's involvement with Soviet Jewry. I'm not sure if Sally studied this in school, but
No, I did not.
The Soviets were the idea of communism. A big part of communism was to erase any connection to religion.
Well, I'll tell you.
Go ahead.
After the 6 Day War, the Jews in Russia became as excited about Israel as American Jews were. Golda Meir was ambassador to Russia, and she came to synagogue one time, and the Jews swarmed over the car, and the relationship of love to Israel became manifest. The communist government did not like that, and they started to be very repressive to Jewish life. At the same time, the notion of Israel was very strong. And there was a very strong notion of homeland in Russia, and that the Jews had Israel as their homeland. It was a point of criticism, a point of respect in a sense. So Jews started to become restive, and a feeling went around that they had to start preparing to get out of Russia. At the same time, the American government was opening up what they call a détente to try to break through the Cold War and the Iron Curtain and try to create relationships with Russia that would tone down the intensity of the Cold War. And it's all worked together. And so we started developing in America a movement that would reach out to the Soviet Jews. And Grandma and I were part of it. In 1974, we and another couple who was a state prosecutor went to the Soviet Union on a 2-week mission to reach out to Jews in criminal law distress in 4 different cities and to help them. And to our great surprise, they were helped. And just about all got out of Russia. And we met them the next year in Israel. It was a very exciting time.
That must have been a complicated trip to go. In Russia, there was no tourism at that time, I'm assuming, between the United States and...
There was a bit of tourism. We we got visas. There was a holdup, but we decided to go anyhow. We got the visas at the last minute, and we were able to go. And we went first class, so we had in-tourist service with us. And in-tourist guides took us around. And at first we were very careful about not tipping our hand, but then we saw they knew what we were doing, and we took advantage of it. So we got the in-tourist cars drive us to where the refuseniks, as we called them, lived, and we visited with them, helped them.
In what ways?
I could tell more stories about that.
Go ahead.
So we met in the house of
Vladimir Slepak?
not Slepak. I forget the man's name, who was under criminal law pressure. And we determined that we had to see the procurator, who's like a prosecutor and inspector general that we have in the United States. I don't know what you have in Israel. But how to go? We didn't speak Russian. They wouldn't speak English. So one of the refuseniks, a woman named Lydia Kornfeld, had been an excellent interpreter and was involved with Russian diplomacy and interpretation of English to Russian, Russian to English. So she volunteered, and we said, how can you volunteer? You'll be in danger. I said, no, it's okay. So we went along, and we decided as a strategy that we'd use her as an interpreter just as you use an interpreter in court. When you have a witness who doesn't know the language of the court, you don't speak to the interpreter to speak to the witness. You speak to the witness yourself. The interpreter translates, and the witness answers. The interpreter translates. But you're always looking at the witness, not at the interpreter, forcing the witness to look at you. So she did, and she was like invisible. And at one point, the Russian assistant procurator turns to Lydia and says, who are these people? She says, I don't know. They asked me to be an interpreter. And so we were passed up to sort of a minor officer, and I took out my yellow pad and started taking notes, whereupon he called someone to come and take notes, which is what we wanted. We wanted to be noticed and take notes. And we were able to do this in each of the 4 cities.
And thereby help these people. You help them drop. Were the charges dropped against them? Were they able to immigrate to?
The charges were
Israel?
dropped. They were able to get exit visas, and we don't know why. We do know that Russia was intent on trying to reach out to the United States in some fashion. We also know that the hallmark of anti-Semitism was to describe more power to Jews than they really have, and we took advantage of that. We came out of Russia very depressed, that we didn't have the ability to do anything. If travelers after us were able to tell stories about what impact we had, and the fact is that the people got out.
Yeah. What made an impression on me as a kid, and I still think about it, is the fact that you, as hard as you worked in your job, took a vacation time that you had, and instead of to go and relax somewhere or go have a good time, you spent it traveling to Russia to help your fellow Jews. And that's something that always made an impression on me. And I think there's a lot to learn from that. And I think there's a lot that the younger generation can learn from that kind of commitment and the willingness to forego your own personal enjoyment for the greater good.
And the movement grew in the United States and enlisted Jews from all denominations, and whether they were affiliated or not. There were huge demonstrations in New York City and in Los Angeles, in Chicago, to free Soviet Jewry. Whether it had an impact or not, it probably did. It probably had an impact on the United States government. It all worked out. It all worked out, and they followed shortly after a very large emigration to Israel from Russia and to the United States.
And how did you feel when the Iron Curtain finally fell and there was a mass exodus of Russian Jews to the United States and to Israel and able to get out, to be an open, practice Judaism openly and to join their people? What kind of...
Well, most were not religious, as you know. And I felt that those who came out under the pretext of going to their homeland, Israel, and then coming to the United States were taking advantage. But it was a very encouraging moment. Compared to now, when there was so much anti-Semitism in the world, there was a great deal of philo-Semitism, the love of Jews, or respect for Jews at the time.
One case, I think, I want to touch on a few key things, and one case that I think that Sally would appreciate and find interesting is the case where you are hired by the nephew of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, about the library. Can you take us through that, and how did
thumbnail sketch?
Yeah.
Barry Gorari was a nephew of the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and was with him in Warsaw when the Nazis were bombing Warsaw, and went into hiding with the Rebbe in Warsaw. His father was in line to be the succeeding Rebbe, but he was sort of pushed aside by I think his brother-in-law, who became the Rebbe Schneerson. What was his name?
Menachem Mendel Schneerson.
Menachem Mendel Schneerson, right. Anyway, Barry's mother lived in 770 Eastern Parkway with the Lubavitch headquarters. And she felt that the extensive library belonged to her son, because he was really the inheritor. And so she encouraged Barry to take some books out of the library, including what they call incunabula, or books that were before the printing press, very valuable. And they caught him, and a lawsuit developed. And Barry lived next to one of my partners and asked if Strzok would take the case. And my partner came to me and said, "Do you want it?" I said, "Sure, I'll take it." And so we went to litigation against Lubavitch Rebbe. It was a long case, a lot of very interesting experiences in that case. Ultimately, the movement won. Barry Gorari lost, and then he ran out of money, and we decided we wouldn't do the appeal, which I now regret because the appeal was terribly mishandled.
So the issue was whether the library belonged to the community, to the Hasidim, or to personal.
Yeah. Right. So the history is that the Rebbe's owned their property, but the Rebbe acquired his books by saying, "Give books to Agudas Chasidei," is the organization. So the district judge felt that there had been a change in how organizations like Lubavitch were governed, and they really had a corporate form, and the corporation was the owner of the books and not Barry. Barry was not a very likable fella, and I could see that this was an understandable result of the case, but legally it was not good law. The law was with Barry.
But were you put under? Did you feel any pressure from the Orthodox Jewish community because you were actually taking a side? You were representing the side against the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who at that time in the 1980s was an extremely popular figure. I mean, he is the figure that made Chabad what it is today, with all the emissaries around the world. And we should also mention at this time the horrible attack that occurred in Sydney a few days ago.
Well, this is much later. This did not have. Modern Orthodox rabbis were not so enamored of Lubavitch. Many Lubavitches started their shuls in neighborhoods that had a synagogue and gave people an excuse to go to shul without paying dues. So there was not such a great feeling about it. Also, they didn't like the idea that a Rebbe could control a person's life. Different later on. And the movement had not yet achieved its popularity. The Rebbe did not become the figure he did until later.
So you didn't feel any pressure?
No, I didn't feel any pressure.
Let's. Anything you
And
want
it
to
wouldn't
add
have
here,
made a
Sally?
difference.
Sally, we're closing up. I think we should close up the discussion. I have something I would like to end with, but before I do, is there anything else you want to touch on with Poppy? I think that Dad, you are here to visit us and to visit your great grandchildren. Can you tell us share the feeling? What does it feel like to be Baruch Hashem in good health and to have traveled to Israel, to have and enjoy your great grandchildren, having lived the life that you lived and all the experiences you have? What kind of feelings are going through your head now? And we're in the last few days summing up this visit with us and your general good fortune, I would say, that you've had. What kind of things can you share with us, or share with Sally and his siblings about and his cousins about your experience and your gratitude or your feelings that you have?
I'm not a praying person, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't feel an enormous sense of gratitude that I can be alive and healthy and do my work and have a family, and also a lady who is my partner. All of this just fills me with a sense of awe. I feel that my life has a purpose, that the perpetuation of family, the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren is an enormous gift, and to see it while I'm alive. To regret that Grandma's not with me and able to experience all of this. It's hard to sum up how I feel. I feel a passion to do justice, and that's my job. And I have an enormous sense of gratitude that my children have my love and mine theirs. They look after me. I can come here and enjoy my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. It's extraordinary.
Well, we feel also the same kind of blessing, and we wish to you continue for many more years as a judge, sharp as you are, and able to really teach some of the lawyers that come before you a thing or two, follow the complicated cases that come before you, and at the same time be involved in our lives and to come visit us, and we can share many, many more occasions together, times together, experiences together. So we love you, Dad, and so happy that you're able to come on the Cup of Joe and share some of your experiences with the younger generation. And Sally, the floor is yours.
My turn. I'll say also when I was in yeshiva, a lot of guys came up after me and said that your father and grandfather, and then after they asked about you, and I said you're a judge. and they thought that's the coolest thing ever. It's always been like that. Always, I say my grandfather's a judge, and people, they don't believe me. They think it's like ever.
Yeah,
Something
believe what?
they don't believe me. It's something I'm very much able to have pride in. And when I say that you're turning 92, they think they heard me wrong. I must be saying 72, 82. I can't believe that. And it was very nice talking to my friends after you came to visit in Yeshiva and get the experience.
Did you like the way we learned?
Yeah,
We
Shmuel
learned
took
together.
a lot of photos. We had a great time. And if Daddy wants me to have a closing question, is in your father's life, and I assume also your life, maybe less so. I don't know how much there was a thought of a bigger sense to life or idealistic life, or more of a kind of surviving and always just trying to focus on the next step. As in, nowadays, at least in my generation, most people are able to live a good life, and you're expected to think about much later in life, much earlier in life, and not just think about the next step. So I wonder, I don't know how to phrase this.
Did I have a long-term goal in mind?
Did you ever think about long term? What did you see your life being when you were a teenager and going throughout the life? And now, 92 years old, with hopefully 30 years more coming, how do you see your past 90 years?
I don't think I had long-term goals. My goal was to be the very best I could be where I was. And I wouldn't say the future would take care of itself. I would always be wanting to struggle and aspire and gain, but I had no long-term objective. I enjoyed each part of my life as I lived it. I mentioned before that I was kind of immature at different points of time, but I had a good time each time. And notwithstanding depressing days and bad days, overall it was good. I like it that I worked hard. I like it that God gave me a gift of health and intelligence. And I like it that I was able to apply it in a way that was productive to family and to society. Could I have foreseen that I'd live to 92? Would I have this wonderful family? These great grandchildren? No. Just to enjoy them.
Okay, thank you very much, Dad, Sally, for coming on the show. And we look forward to many more years together.
Amen.
Happy Hanukkah.